Today is Thursday, July 13th, 2017. Let's take a look at these charts really quickly. We don't have too much more time here before the market sort of settles down and could become uninvestable. 2.5 hours basically is 2.5 hours from the equities open at the NYSE. That's about the prime time for trading, and after that it kind of mellows out. It becomes a lot more unpredictable and just not as profitable. Okay, so let's do some analysis here, some technical analysis. Now, the Federal Reserve chairwoman is in Congress testifying. You know how it is. It's kind of a dark op. You really don't. Nobody knows who's in there. Nobody can actually enter there. And if you ask a question, if the Congress asks a question of them, the chairwoman, Janet Yellen, and basically it's kind of a hidden subject, or it's even a lie, a deception. Basically, she's just trained to repeat the same thing over and over to the answers, and that's it. There is no government higher authority than the central bank, but it is an unconstitutional institution. So, at the drop of a hat, there could be a military coup and an oust of the institution and a permanent jailing and who knows what else, for basically breaking the Constitution, which is, it'd be something you would think of it kind of like breaking the Ten Commandments. Okay, so there's that. There's them, and I think they are running the clock down. I don't see a big future for that business. And what is it? I mean, you think of a mining business. They drill oil, they drill metals, clay, right? Making bricks. There's agriculture. Right. Well, they make money. They don't even have to print it. Really, they do print, but they mostly just type it in a computer. That's it. It's all on computers. So I mean, it's the cheapest business there can be, but it's a broken business, and so we've got to move on from their broken institution. It's a mafia holding a country hostage for ransom, which is our tax money. Right. And there's a lot of other perks in the system that go with it. So basically, it's you have all the money in the world. All that's left is power and defeating competition. That's it. So basically, controlling minds, wars, coveting, and pedophilia. A lot of pedophilia, killing, maiming, torturing. The elitists are not known as the good people. They're more like the good fellas. Yeah, hint, hint. Times the scariest horror movie that about demons that you can recall. So, and we are trying to do our best and defeat that kind of thing in our world. But we are, like I said, we are held hostage. I mean, they even got the government hostage now. It's kind of counterproductive to tell everybody that, and presidents have been assassinated as well as others for saying as much or nearly as much. And so that is that is the biggest news in the world, as a matter of fact, and hardly anybody knows it because of those reasons. Now, the fact is, though, is that the internet's out there, and the word is getting around. You can't be in the government and announce these things to the people because you will suffer consequences. And even still, it doesn't really do any good to stand up there in a government because it's just not going to do any good. So basically, people out here have to pound the table, right? It's the people representing the people, seeking out the problems and the resolutions. And that's what we're doing. That's what the internet is. The internet's like its own Congress, pretty much. And I've even heard it from some patriots that get out there in the streets. I know there is one, his name is Badass Uncle Sam. You can look him up on YouTube or on Google, but go to YouTube. His best stuff's on YouTube. He does sell some shirts and that kind of thing. He does advertise art. But mostly he's down there in New Orleans, and he gets out there on the street and he talks to people about, what they don't know. Basically, he just introduces himself, and he's a character. He looks kind of the part of the Uncle Sam. He dresses in the old classic outfit to fit that look. He shaves his facial hair and grows his hair in that particular style. And he's very talkative. He's very informed, and basically just repeats the same scenario over and over. And the situation is that the nation is kind of turned against itself, and there's a reason for that, because that is the science, quote unquote. And I think that's what I'm going to start calling it, the science, because there's a whole practice and phenomena in that area, and it should be studied, and it should be something of textbooks or academia, and I think that there should be college degrees in it. But you know what? I'll tell you, the more I work, the more I find out that there are things that should be taught in college, but they are not nearly to that, I guess, metaphysical level of awareness and intelligence. It's just the era that I'm in. I'm lucky to be at the front. I feel, compared to a lot of continents and compared to every other generation, yet there are still barriers to break, and you can't it's very hard to break them alone. You've really got to have a lot of support. You've got to have a wide level, or a widespread level of awareness about particular things that need to be pushed forward, and then you can break through barriers, and then you can't be countered because it's just a common level of awareness. But that is a phenomenon itself, and that can be used for bad things as well. So it's a tricky kind of playing with fire kind of situation, and there are those that are professionals playing with the fire in order to burn down the empire, either for strategic purposes, to become rich forever. There's also strange, esoteric beliefs out there, cults. There are also patriots and just practical minds that are playing with the fire to burn those that I just mentioned down, right? So, and then there's you, and basically the saying goes, if you don't stand for anything, then you'll fall for anything. And so I've chosen a side, very unmistakable, and it's a matter of honor, which is comes with a level of commitment to that honor, which is the preservation of my kind, and that would be the logical kind, right? So logical empire, last forever. debaucherous, inane, insolent, dun-dun empires just kind of, I don't know, man. They're kind of up their own back attics. Hard to pull a head out of the cloud that just believes it's the highest, you know. So time will tell. Time will tell. I'll tell you I keep on telling people, you know, the path this far is littered with fallen empires. Just imagine a long, long road, thousands of years, that goes everywhere in the world. And the whole thing is just littered with fallen empires. Some places they're stacked over the top of each other. It just depends on what era, you know, and then there's sub-empires. I've done a whole study, research, it's kind of like artifact finding. If you go out there and like some kind of barren land, and then you start digging, you've got to get down to where the materials are, and then you've got to get in there with your brushes and your fine pick probes and carefully etch out the artifacts. But this is meticulous research, study, discussion, thinking, many hours just thinking. And then writing as well. A lot of times I write, and that's how I think. So it's a combination between just being mindful without doing anything, and then writing a lot, hours and hours and hours and hours on end. That's how I think. It's logic. It's logical deductionism. That's the kind of stuff that makes empires last forever. And I feel like I'm a part of one that is thousands of years old, still standing up against same problems, which a lot of people would basically understand as godlessness. Anyway, let's take a look at these charts, see if we can make some money. First off, let's go ahead and... Now this is the NASDAQ on here. It is on the 5-minute chart. I'm going to go to the daily chart. Okay. So this is pretty good right here. This is because of the Federal Reserve. Basically, here's the concept. The concept is that Federal Reserve is gonna basically barely do anything to the interest rates. Yeah, they'll raise them, but it's gonna be far and few in between. You know what I'm saying? So they're going to spread it out. It's going to be tiny little raises. And so there's still, $4 trillion out there. Technically, that's not even a scratch in the bucket compared to what's really out there, but that's what y'all understand. And that is what comes from the Federal Reserve. So that is the billboard notion that everybody knows. And so basically, since inflation is not going to start deflating at a rapid rate, which is what people are saying, basically it doesn't mean that there's going to be a hard time for the stock market. That's the assumption. Okay? And so that's what this is about right here. Basically, this is about the Federal Reserve's not going to do anything. Okay, they're not going to hit the brakes. They're just going to kind of coast. Actually, no, they're on cruise control, and they're going to knock it down, a couple miles at a time, a couple times a year. That's the understanding. Okay? That's what's going on out there. But I am still of the notion that the entire system is completely broken, and this is essentially delusional. But delusion can lead an empire, even worldwide. It can. And once your pride gets hurt, in this kind of thing where you start betting against whatever you start betting with logic and investing with logic, right? But the delusion is still controlling the economy. I mean, there's literally myths, in economics now. That's what socialism is. That's what Keynesianism is. Okay. Central bankism, right? The whole thing is it's all a myth. Mythical money, right? Where does it come from? Why do we owe anything? So on and so forth. And basically, how it is when you bet the wrong way, right? You lose, you do it again, you lose again, your pride starts getting hurt. So you basically have to keep an eye on reality, but you've also got to keep an eye on the delusional, right? Because it's the delusion that's calling these shots. That's why this price is up like this. That's what this whole leg is about on up here. So, go with it. If it continues to continue making new highs, I'll be very surprised. I suspect that we're going to take another check here. There are people out there talking about a correction. Okay. Alright, so now I started talking about it, and then now the streak, the hedge funders, the big money, they're talking about it. So that is in the wind. There are people saying that, well, I don't think it's so bad. I think basically what it is that there's a correction, but it's not going to be a bear market, right? So, and that's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the S&P 500 E-mini futures, right? So not the SPX stock market. Right? I'm talking about the S&P 500 E-mini futures, which is what we trade here. And my speculation is that we are looking to 2,300. I bet I am an outlier on that notion, but that's where I'm going to stick, because that's what logic tells me. The notion that this thing can continue to rally and rally and rally on nothing it just seems very impractical. I think that the only hope here is. Okay, so if the market corrects, then the central bank simply just knocks rates down again. But it's so minute. They aren't even up to 1% yet. You know what I mean? So I think they've raised 2 times, maybe 3. Okay, so it's not like they can really do a whole lot, but the market is not extremely overbought here. In fact, if this thing were to correct, there should be enough gas in it to get it back up to all-time highs, or somewhere, considerably close to all-time highs here. And you could see a rotation up and down for, I don't know, a couple of years, I would suspect. It's going to need tax cuts in order to actually make some money, rather than just continue to borrow money. There are bubbles. Bubbles are everywhere. There's auto loan bubbles, big. The home loan bubble has come back some. The education, college education bubble is enormous. So that's got to explode one of these days. Now they're trying to get the healthcare thing in there. Okay, so that's just another, one of these government Ponzi schemes. Basically, the central bank is a cartel, and it manufactures money. Okay, so that's actually making something is actually a business, right? But the thing is, though, is that the government could make it cost-free, okay, and then owe nobody, and we'd be the greatest in the world, right? We could actually change the world for the better. Okay, but we've got the European elitists controlling us and holding a gun to our head here, so they get to make the money, and then they get to charge all of our taxes, which are illegal and unconstitutional, as well as anyone like them making our money. So essentially, dry mouth. So essentially, we've got this whole, hostage situation where we're running out of money, we're running out of time. Basically, what we need to do is cover our rears and not get caught by this thing, which means that we've got to be fiscally responsible. Oh, the healthcare thing, right? I lost my place there. Yes. Okay. So essentially, you've got the Ponzi scheme cartel that is fakely making money, and then they charge all the income taxes, and therefore they slow you down economically, and therefore you are a colony of, basically, you're a colony of England, or what is now the global central bank empire. Okay, so now you can't do anything. Okay, now on another notion, the healthcare. Okay, now this is where they're gonna kill you even more. And I was talking about that fella in New Orleans that talks to people, and I'll tell you what, he gets in skirmishes. People are hostile to him, very hostile. They damage his stuff. They try to steal his stuff. They threaten to hurt him. He's very polite, though, and he's very clever and witty, because usually these are just slur slobs that are drunk and, wahoo woohoos that are wandering the world. And, what do you do when you wander the world? You just kind of pick up on what's being splurred out there, and then you start repeating the same thing. You form this paradigm about how the world works, and then you go with that. You don't know anything else, and you just stick to it. It becomes a matter of honor. Okay, now they don't know the full story. They don't know who's actually behind what they're learning. Right? They don't know the whole hostage situation of the world. They just know what they're interested in. Okay. Now, I keep on saying this. People can be delusional. Actually, everybody's delusional because everybody believes something that is just not true. They just don't know it. They don't know why you would ever say that. But I know from personal experience that I believed many things, and then I found out better, okay, that in fact, when I got down to it, I was wrong. Okay? And I know that I see people like this all the time, and they are not easily able to be convinced because they of their honor. There's a matter of honor. Okay. Now this is, the phenomenon of civilization, which is a spirit in each person. Okay? So the information that they have sets a mood and a paradigm and a belongingness okay, which is all a matter of what they see as true, or what they see as important, right? And I will tell you this, that empires are built not solely on truth. Empires are built on honor. Okay? And what's most interesting to the most people. Okay? And so that can also be the ruin as well. Okay? It depends on what's going on. But the thing is, though, is that after years of trying to inform people, I realized that basically this is a global phenomenon, and I'm just one person. And so basically I've sat back and I said, okay, well, you can't change the delusions. There's no way. I mean, it will take too much time to do the teaching. And people don't have that kind of time. And people don't even have the attention span or the retention ability, or are even in the kind of place in their lives where they need to pay attention. So there has to be a desire to learn more, and that is not necessary for them to survive. Okay, so just understand that victory is not dependent on fact, and survivability can sometimes be dependent on delusion. Okay? So let's say that you understood the truth, but the people around you will not let you pass by like trolls underneath bridges unless you believe and repeat the delusion. And you've got to believe it and repeat it so much that you can work it in between the lines, and you can be very affluent in that kind of thinking, that kind of mentality. It's got to be a part of your paradigm. And that's a reality. I mean, this isn't academic talk. This is experience on the street with all kinds of people, in many states, in many areas, urban, rural, and semi. So now, what are people interested in? They're interested in sharing is caring. But what are people also interested in? Free stuff, right? Everybody knows that if you slap free on something, you get people to click your ad, you get people to walk in your store free. You know, and what's the saying? There's a sucker boy every day. And so you know, experienced people see something free and they go automatically, well, what's the catch? So maybe they give it a look, but they're suspicious. Everybody else that's kind of new, you know, they automatically look in the way that the way it's set up, you know, the way they're supposed to for that setup. And it's an advertising gimmick. Sometimes it's more than that. It's to get you to be locked into something that you're going to regret later on. So basically, the concept of cultural Marxism, socialism, when it comes to central bank lending, comes to healthcare, it comes to decriminalizing things that will obviously ruin your empire. Basically, it's these things that they can say, oh, well, we'll just slap a freebie sign on it, and then we'll get all these suckers to go for it, and then we're just going to make up a whole ton of money to keep all of the leaders happy. So if you're in the news, or you're in the universities, or you're in the political field, okay, we're going to get you a whole ton of money. Now, as far as you business owners, okay, well, we're going to give all of these people, freebie handouts, and then they're going to have freebie handouts to come to your stores. But we're going to take away the jobs, okay, out of the country, so you're not going to have a real GDP, which is gross domestic product. That's how you measure the economy. The economy's productivity, success, growth, health. Okay? But what you do have is borrowing money, okay, and then giving to the corporations that are locked into these socialistic deals, and then borrowing more money and giving to the people down at the bottom, okay, and then making sure that all these people are covered. They're all tied in with this magical money. And so, when you go to work, what do you believe? You believe what the bosses tell you, pretty much, right? I mean, if you need money, then you kind of go with the program, right? It would be kind of like if you went to church and you were dependent on the church for a time until you could get on your feet. You would probably believe in what the church was preaching, right? It could be any institution like that, but the church is the most notorious for that. Obviously, with Marxism, they intended when they manufactured all this to replace the church in order to replace the ideals that come with that narrative, and in order to make people more inane, insolent, impractical, inept, insolvent, okay, and thus more dependent on their government. Do you believe in government? It's just building and people, right? That's it. But when you think government, you think of some kind of it's a mythical entity, isn't it? Right? But it's just building and some people, just like you, right? They grew up, they learned some stuff, they hit it off lucky, they got a job now, right? For believing whatever they were taught. And that fella in New Orleans, he says that basically we've got so much going on the internet, in revolutions-wise, that we don't necessarily need a government anymore. We could actually handle it on the internet. I'm semi there with him, but believe me, I want to believe him, but I've got to see a way, and I guess maybe with some of these blockchains, that could help a lot in that way. So we'll see. But so anyway, back to those socialist businesses. Now, you may not be tied in with the government, but you're tied in with all of the people that are getting the socialist check, right? And then you're dependent on them and whatever they believe. So if you've got people in your business that don't believe in these socialist ideals, right, and they're standing for, what's right, what's Americanic, what's, righteous, what's true, what are the facts? No. You know why? Because remember, what everybody out there believes, that delusion is what's got to be sold inside these businesses, right? And then they got families, and they may be out of work receiving checks, but they got family, and they're in your workplace, okay? So they're on that narrative. They're all watching mainstream news. They're all brainwashed by, government public schooling, government subsidized universities. Okay, everybody's on this magic money dole, okay, including the politicians, right? Local and federal. That means local as in state and city, county as well. Some states are less so than others. And so basically, you don't challenge where the money's coming from as the business people, as the employers. So basically you weed out any opposition. Same with universities, right? They are in the business to weed out the opposition. It's the same with within the political arena. They weed out the opposition. Now let me tell you something. I have come to the conclusion, and I'm not the only one on this, but basically the Quran of the Islamos is a political party, okay? And basically the tenets for conquering by Muhammad were that you would infiltrate a new area, you would spread or increase, that was the word, increase by spreading your ideals with everybody, right? And so what you would do is you would key in on their interests, okay? And in keying in on their interests, you could access their honor. And once you access their honor, okay, then you conspire with them to eliminate, and that's the third step, eliminate, right? Eliminate the others and eliminate the previous civilization. So one step after another. Now, if they kill you, once they get in and they're numerous enough, then they start terrorizing and killing you, and then eventually they take over the government, okay? And then they, what Sharia law is, and if you're anything except that political party, let's call it a political party, then you're done up. I mean, it's nothing nice, folks. But you know what? That's not the first political party like that. Basically, every empire that ever was exactly like that. And the first one, well, I wouldn't say the first one, but there's a few, right? You've got Buddhism, you've got Christianity, you've got Judaism. Now, people want to include Hinduism and Islamism in that group. But let me tell you, in Hinduism, they have a caste system. So if you are not in the religion, then you are in the lowest caste, which is the untouchable caste. Basically, you're an outcast. That's not good, right? And so you have no opportunities. And the Hindu Empire is a wretched, deplorable place. They go to the bathroom all over public, and they don't put their trash away. I mean, they can have trash cans right there, but they will still continue to throw trash all over the streets. It's just piled up. It's a mess. The place is a stinking mess. A lot of weird idiosyncrasies like that about the Hindu Empire. But if you are born into a realm, which is what this is, and in that realm you encounter a bunch of other beings, which is what we are around you, and everybody is saying that you are of this caste and you deserve this because they invoke a belief upon you that before you were born, this was decided for you, and you can't do anything about it. And then anytime you try to excel in life, then you are threatened to death. Right? They will kill you. They will rape you. They will rob you. Okay? And so that's how basically they sedate an entire empire, so that the rich elitists at the top, they can basically live a lot safer, and so that no counter revolutions or counter empires can brew up in that region and then try to conquer them. Remember, that was a big deal for thousands and thousands of years. It still is, basically. Right? I mean, you know what China would say, right? I mean, you started a revolution. I mean, they kill you for doing meditation in the Falun Gong, okay? Meditation. So they've taken millions of people and harvested their organs, thrown them in labor camps. It's pretty bad stuff. And then they banned the entire religion, right? So, then every other religion they completely control. It's not free. So that's Hinduism, right? Basically, Hinduism, reincarnatism is it's a karmatic reincarnate cult, and it is a reprobate cult in that it does not begin empires; it would end empires. They'd fall apart, and it's intended to make you fall apart. Ironically, though, it is immune to Marxism. Okay. Unlike Christianity, Judaism, and Buddhism. So I think that speaks wonders for the other three. Islam is also immune to Marxism, it appears, and in their rigid belief system, they're successful in their decentralization of control, as in you are controlled by an external entity, but basically that entity says that you can rip mayhem up on people and rob them to survive. And basically it's like a gypsy, kind of a gypsy cult, but maybe with an Aztec or Mayan kind of bloodlust, warlord bloodlust kind of frenzy to it. They did grow very fast for a long time, in fact. The whole Middle East used to be Christian, including North Africa. Basically, they've killed about 900 million people and enslaved I don't know how many million. And that is done in 1,400 years, mostly with swords. Mostly with swords. So, in a matter of hours, I'll know everything there is to know about that banana-headed. But the thing is, though, is it's decentralized, and the empire enforces it on everybody else. And if you are not a believer, then you are an untouchable again. You are in a lower caste system. They'll tax you differently. They'll set you up and swindle you, and basically you'll get robbed and that kind of thing, and then perhaps raped and killed, kidnapped, sold for slavery. It can be a big mess. So now that kind of practice was much of the world at one time. Okay? And let's fast forward through all the Judaism, through all of the decentralized democracy and republicanism of Judaism, Romanism, Grecism, and all the way through Christian Europe. And the beginnings are basically proto-capitalism, despite the usurpation of the monarchies, up to the constitutionalism, which is statist protection of Christians, Jews, and capitalism. For the most part, let's be realistic, that's basically what the continent we're about. And basically what it means is that crooks, thieves, liars, killers are the untouchable caste, and wise experts are the top caste, and fools are in between. Okay? So you could be rich, but you could still be a fool. And if you are an untouchable, then you're going to lose all the way around. Okay? So, and that is the way that you keep an empire going, because if you let it flip the other way, where you keep the good people down, and the better that they get, and the smarter that they get, and the harder that they work, means the more ridiculed, the more robbed, and the more potential to be killed or jailed or raped. That always leads to a fallen empire. So what is this all about? It's a matter of delusions, right? Where does the delusion strike? It strikes right on the honor of people. When you start losing, when you bet in life and then you're losing, your pride gets hurt, and then you assimilate. And the people that were betting with the delusion, their pride is not hurt, and they are codified, and it is a matter of honor of their kind, and so they have succeeded that way, and therefore they attest to that way. And so anybody that is not that way is detestable. Okay? And that is how they remain on top. And so when you get back to America in these days, and we're talking about badass Uncle Sam down there in New Orleans, well, what's that about? He's out there in the street. He's talking to people that believe in delusions that are created by the central bank Marxists, okay? Which is straight out of European elitist dark rooms and institutions. Basically, it is a splinter element of the old monarchies and company. Right? They used to rule the Christians in Europe. And then they came up with the central bank. And that's when the English Christians and the German Christians, for the most part, started to skeeter across the Atlantic in order to hide. Primarily Londoners, not Londoners, but primarily English, British in the north, east, and the southeast, and then Germans in the Midwest. That's how it looks. And then basically it just kind of got mixed up after a while because America became such a big business. But originally it was to escape the tyranny that was unleashed with this new central bankism between London monarchy and Hessian monarchy. And Hesse is actually Hessen now, and it is a principality or province of Germany now, and it is approximately where Frankfurt is, which is where the Rothschilds originated. And they are key to the rise of the central banks out of London and all over Europe. It was a family of 5. And those 5 sons of the original Rothschild money changer out of Frankfurt, they split up and they went to France, London, Italy, one stayed in Frankfurt, and I'm not sure where the other one went, but and then that was the rise, the big rise. They actually capitalized the most within that generation, and they never looked back. Basically, it'd be like infinite profits. From who? No less than the governments that can basically victimize and declare anything they want and tax endlessly and conquer as many lands as possible, creating slaves, taxes, taking ownership of companies, industries, the entire stock market, the London Stock Exchange, the bonds, right? So So there's the beginning of a new delusion. What's the delusion? That they actually own things? That's the delusion? That's the delusion. It's a myth. They live in a myth. Now these are kids that grow up informed that they are these genuine articles of these genuine myths, these delusions. Okay? But they're part of the families, right? So they're kind of like monarchs, right? It's an esoteric cult. And basically, I've boiled it down to a cult called eugenicism, which means that you are to euthanize and enforce restraint on other bloodlines as a means of membership to the club, the cult. And therefore, by this thinking, arises these royal families. Well, these are just people with 2 legs, 2 lips, right? These are not experts at any kind of skills. They don't go around in a charitable way changing the world or devoting their lives to magnitudes of research or heroism or talent that benefit anybody at all. But they're known as the rich people forever, right? So you think of these rich monarchs, and you hear people go, oh, but I was the flower lady at the Queen's ceremony. Okay, big deal. What if you were the flower lady at Warren Buffett's ceremony or Elon Musk's ceremony? I guess it would be kind of like that, but you gotta, the world's so old and it's been living in such a delusion for so long that people are mesmerized. They're enchanted by that still because the delusion. They read about this stuff. They saw how other people talked about royalty. The priests. Alright. Kings and emperors arise out of a time which I call the ideological era. And in this era, cult priests arise, and they are in magnitude like you wouldn't believe, and they rise and they fall, just like the kings in their empires. So it's different kinds of empires. Now you look around in America and the rest of the world, and you count how many businesses there are, how many music fads there are, how they come and they go, how many fashions there are, they come and they go, types of vehicles, on and on and on, accents, languages. Okay. Now you go back to the ideological era, which would be about 1000 AD to probably about 5000 BC, maybe back to 12,000 BC. Okay, so it's a long time, it's a long stretch. And so you've got these explosions of ideologies rising and falling, rising and falling. And what's happening? People are born, they look around, they believe what people are telling them, they find out if it works, and then another group has a different belief, and then they clash, or they join, or, etc., etc. Now, these aren't nice deals. These are robbing people. These are extremely delusional people, and in all kinds of different ways. I'm not talking about hundreds of ways. I'm talking about thousands and thousands and thousands of different waves over the thousands of years. And there were opportunists, right? If you could set up some kind of slab, right, and basically make a sacrificial temple or monument or something, then you could attract some attention. Maybe set up a stage as well. Get some fire going on, sacrifice some kids and some women or something, roll off some heads, let them roll down the stairs or whatever. Maybe even cook people parts and serve them, and make sure that you're doing ceremonies with groups of people, so that it feels like it's kind of an honor to be in the group. And just put the smooth talkers up there that are loud and boisterous and convincing. Okay? Say the invocations, the chanting invocations, the magical language words and stuff that nobody's ever heard of. Remember, people are coming out of the middle of nowhere and they're seeing this. Imagine if I closed your eyes and then you vanished and then you went into another world and you woke up there and you can't remember anything that you know right now. And this is what you learned and this is what you saw. And so this was going on for thousands of years. They used to boil people in gigantic pots. Always these ceremonies, killing. They would be cutting goats' throats or lambs' throats. They were hybrids between kings and priests. So when it came to like the Pharaoh of Egypt, the Pharaoh was a king and a priest at the same time. And if you hadn't noticed, the attraction to Egypt is still there. It's still a huge business, right? So imagine 3,000 to 5,000 years ago, and these monuments are out there in this mystical world, and people are hearing about it, then they're traveling down there to see it, and they're seeing this, and they're going, oh my, how could this be done? These must be the superpower, these have to be, everything, right? The meaning of everything. They must have special connections with the powers that be that made this realm, right? Because that's what you're hearing, right? And so that's how you start to think. And don't you dare challenge it. Okay? Well, it all means that basically this realm comes from somewhere, and it's been put a lot of different ways. Okay? Some ways are peaceful ways. Some ways are I would say non-applicable ways, or basically kind of neutral ways. Peaceful ways are idiotic ways. How about idiotic ways? Okay. How about evil ways, right? So as their skills over thousands of years developed, it's kind of like crooks in prisons. Right? They go in, they learn some new skills, they get out, they try some new stuff, they learn some new stuff, they get caught again, okay? And they didn't get killed, right? So then they pass on their wisdom and their knowledge, so crooks just get better and better and better. Well, it happens the same in any institution, in fact, whether it's corporations, banks, governments, schools, Hollywood, etc., etc. And so eventually, basically what they're doing is they're taking thoughts, they're learning what really gets the people going, right? They're learning how to control the people. Do I say this? Do I need to dress in this? What if we try this ceremony? We'll just say this, and so it's all over the place. There's nowhere to go. Okay, you can't escape this. You're alive, and you may be a good person, and you may care about your people. You may care about your children and your people around you. So what's the best thing that you can do? Because you're seeing that all your tribes have wound up in this stew pot of idiocracy, insolence, murder, mayhem, rape, slavery. Slavery's everywhere. Wars are everywhere. It's just hell on earth. And who is it being directed by? Nothing other than these basically possessed human bodies. They're full of demons, right? They're full of diabolical wisdom, diabolical truths. They know the school of mysteries, right? And so they just keep it going on and on and on, and you can't escape it. So what do? Well, you know the rule, right? People believe in delusions, okay? And you can't teach them the truth without tripping a tripcord and getting blown up, right? So basically, that's the situation. So you have to basically look around and incorporate what they're all doing, what they're all trying to explain, and then use that in order to get across that delusion into their honor, and then try to develop them kind of like a drill sergeant, right? Kind of like a teacher, like a drill sergeant. It's kind of humiliating at first, but then you start to see yourself develop, and you become a practical, upstanding, well-formed, not only individual, but well-formed units, such as a family. Right? And so basically it was kind of the returning back to the freedom before this demonic spell took over the world, right? When tribes were just tribes and families were just families in those tribes. And basically, if you lived long enough to learn the meaning of the old stories and the ceremonies that they would get together and do, you can kind of get a feel of what that was like if you study the Aborigines from Australia and I believe it's New Guinea. No, Tasmania. It's an island off of Australia. And so if you're old enough, you survive long enough, finally you'll understand the meaning of these things, and you realize that basically if you understand the meanings of what these delusions or ideologies are, it's teaching them a bit of wisdom with a little bit of Kool-Aid in order, well, I shouldn't say Kool-Aid because we know what the Kool-Aid refers to, right? Jim Jones. So it's mixed with some flavor and some spice. It's kind of entertaining. It is alluring. It is intriguing. And it's easily remembered. You've got to have it so that it's easily remembered. And they can pass these things. They would pass these things for thousands of years, in fact. And what do you want as a father, as a patriarch? You want your family and your people that you've survived to become the oldest guys, to live on for thousands of more years, for infinity, right? So that's what patriarchy is originally about. It's just being able to basically procure the minds and the stories and the traditions in order that your kind will pass, right? Through infinity, through the challenges in this realm that everybody appears in magically. Right? Every mother has a mother, right? But never mind. But the thing is, though, is that how do you get an atom in the first place, right? Now, when you start wondering where all atoms come from and that kind of thing, that's idealism. When you say that things just are because they are, and that is all there are, well, that's materialism. And so really, through all this time, that's been the big argument. But before there was materialism, there was idealism, and the reason why idealism was popularly taught before the evil usurpations started taking over all the tribes, right? Conquering everybody and filling them with insanity. Okay? Basically, the idealism was taught in their stories, and they had different kinds of stories. And basically, it was just to give them a picture of infinity, that something does not come from nothing. So there is more to this, and they are part of something gigantic and sacred, and so let's do the best that we can. And then crooks later on in time started to plague people, to use them, turn them into villains, turn them into bewitch them. Imagine generals with a witch's hat bewitching hordes of warriors to go raid people that were just farming. All they were doing was hunting and farming. That was it. But instead of actually working and farming and coming up with ways to survive forever and ever and ever, they're going to come up with a way to manipulate their minds, manipulate their souls. And this is what they worked on for thousands of years, getting the words just right, getting the whole ceremony, the whole arrangement, the hierarchy, the setup, the nomenclature, all of it just right, in order to stand in front of these hordes of people and go out there and rob and kill endlessly and aimlessly. And do you know who benefits the most? The witch at the top. Right? That's all it's about. It's just about enchanting people with delusions that get into their honor and then set them apart against each other, and then you turn the world into a little civil war in your area, and you are laden with riches at both sides' expenses. So the top is always honored only to themselves, whereas the bottom, that's actually doing the dirt, they are fooled. They are fooled. And then they're victims. You know how it goes. So what happens is that then they have to protect themselves. So then you have basically the story of history, right? Attack and defense, attack and defense. What works best? Ideologically speaking. And so now I ask, when I ask, is something good or bad? Basically I ask, does it begin an empire or does it end an empire? If neither, then let it ride. But if either, then figure out, what is the real value? What is the real value of that concept, in that it, what does it do to the spirit of people, right? So why is it that criminality ends empires, right? Why? Because it creates distrust most of all. And so if you're distrusting everybody, then you're probably hating everybody. And if you're hating everybody, it's very hard to go out there and do things that are beneficial to your whole world, to your community, right? You're going to think mostly about how to protect yourself, defend yourself, and how to attack back so you don't feel like you're always being overpowered. Now, that's a bad existence, right? If you're always feeling like you're being overpowered and conquered. Okay? But if you're going about and everybody basically is kind of like, they're not criminals, they're just honest, and they're always busy trying to learn something to do for everybody, well, then you're not so defensive, you're not so hurt, and you're able to should be able to find a means of doing just as much. Okay, and so then you get into the area of justice. Right? So this justice applies directly to that particular phenomenon of civilization where the spirit has a mood, okay? And the information enters spirit and it creates this mood of distrust and then hate and then savagery. Okay? And so, they used to say it was an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. And this is how they found some truth out there in the era of ideologies, right? When they escaped from slavery out of Egypt, right? The Ten Commandments, the same thing, right? And this had succeeded for over 1,000 years. And then the prophet came along, protested this era of insolence and usurpation, right? So rather than making everybody villains and filling their heads with insolent delusions, the prophet protested against that and endorsed this Ten Commandment Hebrew Judaist ideology, and then added the next volume or chapter or the modification, the 2.0, which was cleaner and simpler, basically. But where does it touch? It touches on people's interests. Right? There's a person that's a hero. This was a person that was not out to get rich and use people and then teach them insolent ideas. This is the kind of person that if a child were to learn by, that child would not learn what these villains want them to learn, or him or her to learn. And so children can study things that matter. They can help out around the house without being villains, and then have a clean record, and then go learn from a master of some kind of skill as an apprentice, and then become experts and provide for the community, right? Or go to school, or basically go be useful rather than being villainous savages running along with devout honor for nothing but delusions, insolent perpetual ending delusions, right? And so that is something that starts an empire, doesn't it? Yes, and that is why Christendom is the biggest empire in the world. In fact, there are more members of Christendom now than all generations before combined in the entire world now. Right? And who started the American Constitution and the advent of free capitalism, free thinking, and free speech, which was not to be controlled by these priesty kingies that wanted to control everybody, like possessions of technology, the super phenomenon of the human spirits. Well, it was Christendom, right? They graduated from Europe. Unfortunately, the friends, the brethren and sisters of the land that it originated from, which was the Middle East, was pretty much conquered by the Islamos. In fact, North Africa as well. The Europeans did have to come down there and save them at one time around the area of Jerusalem, but the rest of it was conquered, and they are still conquered. But Christendom was spreading extremely fast. In fact, has spread all throughout Asia, Africa, Latin America, North America. There's nowhere where Christendom really isn't. And why? Because it's an empire that does what? It's an empire that begins and then it lasts, right? So the rule of thumb is, if it begins an empire, okay, and it has stood the test of time underneath all forms of pressure, and it has benefited the world more than any other, then maybe that is the truth. Or that's the only truth that you need, perhaps. Well, so now, when we're dealing with the Ponzi scheme up there in the central banks, right? They've centralized money manufacturing, okay, which is also part of civilization. It's also part of that study, okay, civilization science. Okay? It's also part of the usurpation science. Okay? It was specifically designed as a weapon in Europe, and by the people that were basically holding all of the European Christians hostage for many hundred years. And then now we have the basically the centralization of health care. Why? Because it's part of the Marxist institution, right? Which is part of the central bank institution. Hold on. So there are many quotes by the Soviets, such as Lenin and Stalin and so forth. I believe even the Nazis were talking about it. Basically, you've got to get hold of the healthcare, and then basically you've got the people, by the biology, right? And what also falls into biology? Psychology. And so then, if you can control it that way, then you get to have that handled not only on eugenics, right, which is euthanasia, okay, and other features of that ideology or myth, but also declaring who is mentally compatible or mentally competent, and then grading them based on their compatibility, and then down to a bottom caste system of incompetence. So if you have any competition, whether racially or ideologically, then you can say that they are basically mentally incompetent or biologically inferior or unnecessary, and therefore you can enslave them. And now when you enslave and or euthanize, what do you get in that process? You get everything they own, right? You get rich, okay? And that is a lot of what all of these empires have been about. That is a lot, well, geez, that's the main article for the central bank Marxism. They're up to 1 billion deaths. They did that in 3 centuries, beginning small in Europe and then expanding all around the world now. They are all around you. In fact, I would say a minimum of half the people, are carrying the water for that delusion. Even in America, the place that was the safe haven to stand up against all of that, the empire that was to last, it may still last. I see some technology is going to help us out here. information technology, right? Because that's what they control. They control the information. They've always done, right? They centralize the information. Well, now we've got the information technology to decentralize it so that they can't control it, and so that they are held accountable to the same conditions as everybody else. So you can't get this, special privileged group that are growing up with these inane ideas and ideologies and experiences, so that they're believing that they were born to be some kind of immune derelicts, while everybody else was born to be their possession, used for whatever purpose they have the whimsy for. Okay? So now they are going to be subjected to truth. Right? And so if you really boil everything down, basically this Christendom is the you can think of it like a gigantic political party that is about the truth and protecting it from would-be villains. And then the Constitution takes it and makes it the law of the land, which was never done before. And so now it protects the truth and then the activities that can come of that. Unless you are robbing, lying in many cases, like if you lie in court, right? If you lie politically, that kind of thing. If you lie when it comes to your business accounting, the way you do business, cheating, of course, and of course killing. Whereas these things might have been praised or at least protected in many, 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 many other empires. Okay? Even to this day, still that way. But here we are with the centralization of healthcare, and you're going to see some very, very stout, devout people that don't want to talk about it, as well as may become very belligerent about it. Now, I believe that their hearts or their interests, for the most part, are in the right place, because what are they about? They're about their honor, which is to protect the health of other people. This honor, for the most part, is about survival, and this is particularly why Marxism and the whole cult focuses on healthcare. Right? Ain't it ironic that a soulless, heartless cult is so considerate about a moral platitude? They get and infect into you with moral platitudes, but they are 100% materialistic. They're not spiritual, except for some divisions of them where they practice Satanism. They literally practice Satanism. They have ceremonies, sacrifices to this day. Kids, right? They drink their blood. They eat the bone marrow out of kids. They rape them. They torture them. They pass them around. They fly them around the world. I mean, these are like chattel. It's pretty bad out there. But you know what? I'll tell you something. That exact thing has been happening for thousands of years. It just has never stopped. And with this infinite money thing going on in this world, right? These temples of infinite money. Okay? There's a whole shadow government. There's a whole shadow world where it all thrives and continues to this day. Even in Hollywood. Yeah. In fact, a lot of Hollywood has to do with that, as well as the musical celebrities. And if you don't submit to these cults, okay, practice the ceremonies and that kind of thing, then basically it's an oligarchy, and that you will not be supported. You've you've got to bow down. You've got to break the Western traditions and ideologies, and basically sell your soul to the cult, to Satan, right? The deceiver. And I won't get into why that is. The devil is called the deceiver, or why why deception is called the devil. But that's a whole chapter. So anyway, so here we have a cult, and they try to infect you based on your moral platitudes. Moral platitudes is where your honor's at. Your honor is where your survival's at, the survival of your kind. And so they offer you free money, right? That's what socialism is about, against capitalism. Okay. Well, if you have free money, okay, and there's infinite money to give away, then those churches must not be any good, because who needs them, right? I mean, you don't even have to pray. You get it from a devil right over here. They rob everybody else. They give it to you. And so within generations, people don't have those ideologies. Now let me tell you something. Not Israel. Before it was Israel, it was called Judea. And basically they had the Jewish tribe, and they had a 200-year-old republic, right? It was the first republic in the world, which means for the people and of the people. Okay? They didn't have a central government. They didn't need it. Basically, you was just Jewish. You was taught Judaism. You went to the temple, and every man had arms, and if there was ever any combat, then they would be called to arms, and basically it was a citizen army, and it worked for 200 years, and they did very well in that 200 years, in fact, just as you would think a republic would do. In fact, who else is a republic? Well, Rome was a republic for a series of centuries, and they did magnanimous, right? Because they decentralized the power. They decentralized the control of information. What is law? It's information, right? What is the Torah? It's information. Well, here's the thing. Here's what happened in this Jewish republic. The priests stopped teaching everybody or stop preaching to everybody, stop teaching them the ways, okay? And so then they fell apart. They began killing each other. Basically, it just melted down into a malicious kind of civil war situation. Okay. Now, in America, basically that's happening now. So what happens is the central banks come in. They come in on moral platitudes, even though they're soulless SOBs, and they offer all the money. And so you don't have to go to church anymore. You don't even have to pray anymore. Because why? Because it's just given. It's right here. And so within generations, nobody's growing up in church anymore. Okay? Just like in that republic. And so what happens? If you don't believe, if you have no reason to believe that wise elders and experts are at the top, okay, and hardworking people are up, but crooks, liars, and cheats, okay, and murderers and anti-nationalists are at the bottom, if you have no reason to believe that, then what's going to happen? Well, does it begin an empire or does it end an empire? That's the question. Okay. So even though the people, they may know some facts, they may know some delusions, and they may seem like moral delusions, right? But where is their honor? Their honor's with greed, perhaps, pleasures, which is hedonism, right? So pleasure over truth, more fodder, more access to excess over truth, over practicality, over the law, over God, over Christ, over anybody who even acts like a saint, right? So is that the beginning or the end of an empire? Remember, who were the people that started your empire, right? And now who are the people living on the central bank vines, right? No longer knowing anything about, and not only that, not just not knowing, but detesting, strongly detesting. So much. Do you know what it is? I've noticed people that are vehement about no tolerance for Christians. You can be a Muslim, right? But you can't be a Christian, especially not a white one. Okay. And what is that about? Well, races, or, the world's pretty old, so it kind of divided up into actual genealogy empires, right? So there's the conflicts there, and I always understand that one. What can you do? You can listen. That's what you can do. But for the most part, there's a matter of humility. Okay. Now, humility is a hard pill to swallow. All right. And why is that? What does it mean? I think that's a whole nother chapter there. But basically, being humiliated, a lot of times it's like throwing gasoline on a fire, right? Because what do you get when you see somebody becoming humiliated? A lot of times you get backlash, right? So it blazes up. And trust me, that goes back to that code of honor. And that is how people can be controlled. That's how people can be turned into civil wars. Now, really, the whole world in that way is one civil war, right? Okay. And it comes down to humility, or being humiliated, and the resistance, not just to being humiliated, but being robbed and killed, enslaved, and that kind of thing. So it's an old world, and the taste is so bitter. It's still here. Right? Everything you know, literally, comes from this. A lot of delusion, and for a lot of reason. Every bit of it for a reason. Some good, some bad, some practical but not good, right? Some foolish and completely random, right? Some of it's just to survive the suffering of hardships. It was not an easy time for the past 10,000 years. Come on. I mean, just this last generation, right? Like 2 or 3 generations ago, only here, did people actually get to start keeping their teeth all their lives. Kids didn't stand a chance. Pretty tough stuff. So, a lot of suffering, a lot of misery, a lot of bitterness, a lot of resentment. Not just resentment of each other, but the Creator. Resentment of the Creator. And so you invent celebrations, right? You invent traditions. You invoke certain concepts. In a way, food. You get into food, color, clothes, dress, ceremony, tradition. And so then you can suffer the misery that much better. And in so doing, you're that much stronger. And remember, if it's the beginning of an empire that lasts longer, perhaps it's a tradition that lasts, or a tradition that carries you on forever, where each one may pass away, but the total of that kind never passes away, right? And so when it comes down to healthcare, that's where everybody's heads is at. And that's why they picked healthcare. They literally sat down and they studied this stuff. Okay? Vehemently. Scientifically. They honed in on it. They did a civilization science study in institutions, okay, with all kinds of students and academic professors and scientists, studying history, doing tests, thinking out loud in committees and that kind of thing, right? Thinking about what you think about. And basically what they're trying to do is they're trying to get into your heads without triggering a rejection of them, right? So if I'm a mosquito, okay, the first thing I gotta do is get into your skin without you swatting me. So I have to be clever. I've got to numb your skin, okay? Or if I'm a leech, the same way, or a tapeworm, or anything else, right? Or maybe I'm eating your back off, but you're not feeling it. You don't feel a thing. Maybe even whatever it is that's on my teeth and in my saliva, maybe it's causing your mind to go, woo woo, and so you're not thinking so clearly. And if you're not thinking so clearly and you really can't feel the pain, then you're not really stopping me, as if I'm the central bank Marxist, right? And so that's the idea. That's why they enter your mind on a moral platitude. They're trying to take over masses of people. And then what is the intention? Well, to make you think that they're going to help you survive. They're going to change your traditions. They're going to change your delusions in order to get you hooked on their information. First, the money information. Then, the narrative information, right? So basically, think of your universities, your news anchors, and your newspaper editors, and your bosses as priests, right? From the top to the bottom, spreading this word. And what do they get for practicing this? They get money. They get success. And if you practice what they're saying, then they allow you to access the success. So you forget all your old traditions that carried you all the way here, right? And now you're hooked on this stuff. Okay? And you believe it's all about, for you, it's all about your health. It's all about caring and sharing. Exactly. See, this is the difference between Buddhists and Confucianists, Christians, Jews, and then Muslims and Hindus. Right? So Muslims and Hindus, there's no way you could get in on that. You can't get that in them because they're already taken over by something like that, right? But the rest of these people, that is something that they've cared about for thousands of years. Okay, this is the meaning of almost all their traditions, and so this is such a perfect formula, formulated specifically for that. The sharing, the tradition, the political correctness, yeah, that's something that they made up in an institution. Right? One of the things you got to pay attention to is the critical theory. Critical theory, which is basically anything that is Western, capitalistic, patriarchal, family-oriented, heterosexual, Christian, or Jewish, mostly Christian, masculine, like strong, masculine, right? All that stuff is illogical. People like that can't think facts. Okay? That's what the critical theory is about. Okay? Even the word racism was manufactured by these Marxists. But it's so common now, right? Well, so is anti-capitalism. It's so common now. Do you know that if I go around and I talk like I'm talking, that people just turn their heads? They won't say anything. The majority of people won't say anything because I'm part of that underground network, right? But on the surface, right, they believe in this top narrative, and you can't go against it, I guess. I mean, you've got to be independent. You've got to come original. You've got to come completely learned. You've got to make your own castle of intellectuality and be resourceful about it. You have to have a means of surviving on your own, no matter what. So you're not scared or limited and put off, by any, I don't know what to call it, by any irrational tribes, right? Yeah. So, but, so this healthcare thing, it's stuck now, right? Because if you go against it, then you're evil. What do you want to do? You want to kill people, right? If you go against socialism, well, what do you want to do? You want to kill people? So now they're stuck, right? But if you tried that in a Muslim country or Hindu country, no way, buddy. It just won't happen. It can't happen there. You understand? It can only happen in Christian, Jewish, and Buddhist, Confucius kind of countries where there is that kind of mentality, like, basically you're the bottom caste, you're the untouchable, you're the criminal. Where when you go against those things, because socialism is made to seem like sharing, right? But really it's corporate central bank money laundering, and you're in on it. Worshipping the dollar is what it is. Cultural Marxism, same thing. It starts off as peace and tolerance, but then it becomes this mania of irrational exuberance, okay? Where anything's the enemy, right? Because it's not working any other way. And then you got to one-up it, to be in. So you can't just do the same old thing. You got to get even more about it, And and here's the thing. If you have your own means of finding a way and surviving, it's one thing. Also, if you have no means, then, and I mean ideologically, as in you have no humility, right? You have no humility, you have no wisdom, you have no faith, you have no friend like Jesus to tide you over during the hard spells, right? Where you're boiling or you're toughing it out, right? Scraping and straving, or scraving. What is the word? Can't even think of the word. But, you know, you toughen it out. And if you've got none of that to tide you over to get you through, then you're not going to be able to get across those tests and those challenges, right? And you're never going to be able to be the dad or the mother that puts together a life in order to set up a situation where the children have a kind of wind block, right? And some wisdom, okay? And basically the road is kind of cleared out, right? It's all the underbrush is knocked down and you're on your way. You're going to be climbing up, right? So basically right now, though, the way things are set up is if you just go with the socialism, right? The political religion out there, right? Politics and religion basically the same thing. It's about what you think. You can even use science. You can make up things and say it's science. You can make up things and say it's politics. You can make up things and say it's economics. You can make up things and say it's supernatural. Okay? But does it end your empire? Does it turn your empire against itself? Does it make your empire insolvent? Impractical? Insidious? Basically, does it put the wise people at the top and the criminals on the bottom, right? Do you even know what a criminal? I mean, not you, but because if you were listening to this, you know. But I mean, if a person doesn't even know what a criminal is, and they think that justice is immoral, right? Which is basically what socialism is. It's injustice. Okay? It's not sharing and caring. It's injustice. And it's impractical and insolvent. Same with this healthcare stuff. I mean, this is going to nowhere fast. And that's where they want you to go, because then boom, 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 devil's at the door. And how many lands has this happened in? It's happened in a lot of lands. And it's not just this kind. It's been happening for 10,000 years. How did it begin? It began with tribes. And then they started taking over things, you know? These enchanted tribes, right? Full of delusions, taking each other over. And so it just became lost in a mess, a maze. And it's coming back, you know. America was kind of the place. It was like the other planet, right? You could go to the other planet and pretty much, as long as you weren't some, like, you know, voodoo type, right? We're a molester, that kind of thing, you know. People still tough as nails, right? But for the most part, more opportunity than anywhere else, right? Undeniably. So if you're standing up over the empire and you're saying, okay, these things, yes, there's gonna be some tough spells here, and there's even gonna wind up being some missing people. But what war are there no missing people? Right? Now, is the empire going to survive the wars? Is the empire going to survive the peacetime? Right? That's what, see, if you're trying to say that, well, these things are wrong because somebody got hurt one time, but did it ruin the empire? Right? Okay. And then, I mean, I could actually write the book about this, but who has time, right? I mean, I have time to write the book, but I don't have time to get into all the nitpicky, intricacies about this special area, sensitive area. I try to summarize everything so it's teachable. Basically, if you can get everything down to an EMC squared, then people can remember it, right? That's a lot of what sayings are about, right? You make sayings to pass wisdom, right? So it's easily passable. Or you make wisdom or stories, or your history into songs. So it's easily passable from one generation to another. So people aren't getting lost. Lost ideologically. But anyway, so once they get a hold of that healthcare, they get a hold of the biology, they get a hold of the genealogy, they get a hold of the psychology, the ideology, the politics, and the religion, virtually the same thing. And then they get a hold of the property, the money, the resources allowed to certain people. And where does it go? It goes to hell. Doesn't go any better. I try to be as honest as possible here. As far as these healthcare systems go, I suggest checking heaven on your insurance policy if you don't have a business's insurance policy, rather than depend on the government, and basically try to swallow some humility, because in the end, if you're going around and you're saying that, oh, well, this is the best thing for everybody, and don't dare stand against it, even though it's not, then you are the cause of your empire's demise. You're the cause of the end of your family. And I'll tell you something. These are racist emperors. Okay? These are racist cult priests. Okay? That's how they all are. So, in the world of infinite money and superpower technologies and sciences, it's kind of hard to persist as another kind other than their kind. And I tell people that, basically you've got to get with the times. This is the times of science war, right? You got to get with the information war. And basically that's how you're being attacked, right? So they get you with the chemicals in your food, with the vaccines when you're born, right? They get your mothers before you're born. They're dealing all the drugs, right, to catch you like fish with nets. They're the biggest drug dealers in the world, right? And the illegal drugs is nothing compared to the pharmaceutical drugs, right? The vaccines and the psychology drugs and cancer treatments and so on and so forth. They give you the cancers, they give you the development maladies, the birth maladies, right? They teach you to be resolute about impracticality. They teach you these delusions. So you're sick you're mentally maldeveloped, your gender hormones are all messed up, and you're dumb, you're going to need some government assistance. And they have representatives waiting for you 24/7, in fact. It's a cruel joke that I present this as. That's no lie. But the fact is that everybody's just going with it. And, when it's stupid and everybody's going for it, there's nothing else you can do but put on a smile and tell the truth. Right? The honest man is crazy in an insane world. Yeah. So, if you don't find any kind of humor, dark humor about that or something, or inverse humor, then I don't know. So they've got something called the GDP, and basically the GDP is gross domestic product. It's a measure of the economy's vitality. Right? So if the GDP is going up, a percentage, they measure it in percentages compared to the year before or the quarter before. Then if the percentage goes up, then the economy is doing more business, and it is more, it is flourishing more. Okay, there's more prosperity, and so if it's going up and it's trending up, then your investments are that much more needed. And where your investments are needed, whether it's money, or simply going into business, or simply training to do a kind of work, or teach a kind of skill, then basically you're needed, right? Because prosperity is going up and it will pay you back. So if you're needed, if there's demand, then there is compensation, right? Whereas if prosperity is in the decline, then your investment stands a much better chance of not being used, and therefore you'll invest, you will learn a lesson, but you will also not receive your compensation for your investments, right? So, and that is how it is at the base level on Main Street, and the community level. That's also how it is in the investment world, which is where we're working here, right? With the stocks, the futures, and the currencies, and that kind of thing. It's kind of like the quantum physics level of the rest of the civilization, right? So this area that we're working in is the leverage area, right? That's what investors do. They provide leverage. It's the public culminating their leverage, and we're doing it for profit. We're seeking out profit, but in a indirect way, we're also facilitating the growth of businesses and their legions of workers. And the idea is that if they were part of this, if their business was part of this, they were deriving a paycheck, they were spreading the technology or big service that's in high demand around the country, around the world too, then they were advancing us to the next level and the next level and the next level, right? So through that prosperity and that rise, there's success and peace, and there's time to research and then derive the next level. There's also prosperity there and trust, so that people aren't villainous and insolent. They're going to invest their lives, their young lives, into trying to do something for the community, to change the world perhaps, and especially to receive that big promise, which is compensation, right? They're going to be popular, they're going to look smart, they're going to be called the expert on the top cast, right? That's how we are. And they're going to have the money for good times, good family, the next generations. And they may have changed the world, but at least they didn't ruin it, right? So now where these investment vehicles are that we're trading here, that money can flow to who's in direct connection, which flows to the underlings underneath that management, which flows to the businesses around them, who in turn, have the prosperity and the peace, okay, and the incentive to get on board with the bigger picture. They aren't looking at it like I'm teaching you this. Everybody's just part of the bigger picture that you already understand, and everybody else understands it.
But the animals here are used to the bone-breaking temperatures. As ravens greet the morning,
we've also got to get control of these central banks. Somehow get control of the money, right? Not necessarily control, but basically get the control of money out of some centralized cult, out of their hands and into the people's hands. And I believe that this is going to require the help of the entire world. I don't think that currency or money is something that can be solved for. To keep it out of centralizing hands, these tyrant priestlies, and put it into basically a global democracy with the protective ability to prevent it from being captured and conquered and then controlled. And then basically this stuff doesn't leak onto Wall Street, which then wouldn't leak onto corporations, conglomerate corporations, and government. Right? And basically criminals wouldn't be so prosperous. Right? So if criminals are not prosperous, they lose market share. And if they lose market share, they get poorer. And so if they are poorer, they are not as influential on people, because people look up to people that are successful or supposedly successful. And then, because they've lost market share, then everybody else has the chance to take that market share and develop on top of that or with that, right? So competition gets a comeback. Right? And so what would the world be if that were the case? Right? If you could eliminate all of the criminals, okay, that are getting rich and sucking up all of the mines and all of the market share, What's the world going to be like? Well, first of all, it's going to be a lot cheaper, which translates into people not having to work so hard and in so much misery in order to get the same amount of, success or whatever what everybody looks for in life. Okay? Well, if you don't have to work as hard, basically, and you're not as miserable, then you have more energy and you have more time in your life to spend on something. Like maybe learning something. And if that were the case, and parents are more intelligent as a result, then perhaps the kids start out more intelligent, right? Start out with some more wisdom earlier. And so when they grow up, then they see that what used to be an entire life of troubles, trial and error is now just a basic kind of like a it's not overwhelming anymore. Then they can invest in they can invest in anything, right? They could be the next inventors of something. They could start some kind of movement, right? Now, I'm not saying that everybody's just going to be like, the wonder children that grow up to be wonder adults. No. There's going to be a lot of screwballs. But the thing is, though, is that where civilization is not occupied anymore, right? In the honor of the struggle to persist as living people, then they can be occupied in the next level, right? So now, per individual, it might not seem much, but if you're talking about entire continents, right, that can actually raise civilization up another level, right? So we've raised civilization quite a few levels in the past couple hundred years, right? Because we decentralized the information, right? We took it out of the usurper's hands quite a bit compared to ever before. So if we can do that even more, I'm thinking that this information technology is the next step. It's only about 20 years old, and already it's disrupting. It's spreading like fire on gasoline legs around the world, and the world is figuring out who the tyrants are, who are no good, who's lying, who's cheating. It's all online. People, every day, day in out. I have found entire parts of culture devoted simply to studying these archives about who's good and bad. And then there's all kinds of other genres of information that people are studying. So it's just free information, right? You can have lots of people teaching some kind of wisdom. You can have one person that teaches lots of people some kind of wisdom. It can all be done for free online. I've learned a lot of trades online. Which was never possible before. Ever. So a lot of things can start to come true that were never able to even be imagined, right? This place now was not imaginable at the cusp of, Americanism. Not at all. Let alone Christianity, right? At the cusp of Christianity, not even the foggiest. see here. Let's take a look at these charts. I think that the trading's over. It's 3.5 hours here that's passed by since the open. Let's see if we can find a reversal. If not, then it may be high time. Let's see, it looks like a reversal here on the S&P 500. Let's see here. Swing high was right. Yeah, that's the swing high right there. Okay, this was the swing low. Remember on these to take a look at the overnight inventory. This is neutral overnight inventory, not short or long. And also look at the previous day. How did it act then? Take a look at profile, and I recommend keeping track on economic news, the big stuff, just the big stuff at minimum. But always go with the technicals on the charts, right? It's just that when technicals are testing certain areas and then reacting to them, then you can kind of figure out why that is or what's going on there, right? It's about trying to understand as the chart forms who's behind it, what's the team doing, right? Let's see here. So this is trying, it looks like it's kind of trying to break out. Let's say it's doing a bad job. So we're gonna bounce on the top there. Here was our big reverse right here. This would have been it right here. So this trade, you can see that we've got a long quick tail there, one on each side. You got I mean, that told everything, even the volume's all there. And then you've got this little test here at the swing low, and then it breaks out. So right here is where you ought to be entering, and then bounces off of this support, okay, after the breakout there, and just continues to rocket on up. Take a look here at the NASDAQ. Okay, overnight inventory looks like it went up, then it went back down. That is neutral. Swing low off of this one. Remember, the first three bars aren't really indicative of a lot, so if you're reading this quick tail here on the first bar, not wise, because they're dumping everything out there. There's not really a lot of teamwork there. It's blowing up the market price on the dome, you know, until after about the third bar, then it starts to conform to trading rationality. Okay. So if you read the quick tail or the quick wick on the first three, it's not really doing much. The third bar is more indicative of what's in store than the first one, and then after that, then it really starts to become whatever is going to happen. But still, you do measure the swing low or the swing high, sometimes based on the first bar, sometimes not. Like the swing high was way over here, right? Opening swing high, opening swing low. Okay, so then we've got a bounce just like on the S&P 500. With all these quick wicks right here, basically what it's saying is that there are a lot of bull bass down here biting hard, so you'd be throwing in a line here. You wouldn't have much to risk here, right? Pretty much just all gains. It does look like this was not as strong of a rally as on the S&P 500. Well, I didn't expect that. Normally the NASDAQ has been stronger than the S&P 500. It does look like things sank quite a ways back here. This would have been challenging here, but if we mark things out here, see, the reason why this part right here is hard to read is because there was the Fed chairwoman speaking today. Okay, so that brought in some consternation here. Also, it was 2 hours after the open, so that can start to happen there. This wacky ranging right here, not usually the thing that everybody does at that time of day. Not usually. Normally that would happen somewhere over here. And still, this is really wacky. This is really erratic. Really erratic. So then we finally get a bounce here, but this chart's a lot less reliable than that S&P 500. So I might have lost something here if I were trading this, maybe. But let's take a look at the oil here. Yeah, so I'm not going to trade this. I am keeping an eye on this one, though. It does look like it could turn around and start to sell off. So I'll watch that one. Here is the euro. Why don't we take a look at the euro? Let's see. Swing low. Swing high. Okay. Got a... trending down, and then we break through. Oh wait, this was actually swing low right there. See, this is kind of hard to read. What time is that? Yeah, FOMC comes out at this time, so I'm not going to take this bar seriously, okay? Because that's when the FOMC started coming out with their testimonies. So trend down, breakthrough, swing low. Turn around right here. Basically what this is doing, looks like it kind of wants to bounce off of this as resistance. Right, test low, makes a higher low here. Now if this was still bearish, it would be bouncing off this resistance and then breaking this support and then bouncing off of that resistance and then breaking support again. But instead, you got the quick tail right there that shows you a big bounce. You got a lot of volume right there, and then you break through resistance here. Okay, and then kind of fail up here. It looks like just there's some failure up here. I would say that this is resistance. Okay. This would be new support. Breaks through it. Looks like some. Could say that's bouncing. Maybe. New support. Now this is really bearish right here, right? Okay. Well, basically this whole thing is really bearish. This move down here. Okay, actually, all through here and all through here. Okay, what does this mean? Well, generally, you build some support, and then price comes back up, and then tests that top again. So if you're going to get a reversal, you get kind of a double top or a double bottom. Okay. Or perhaps you get a very long wick or a very long tail. Okay. But in this case, we come down, we can't get back up to resistance there, and then it just breaks through support. Okay. So because these prices right here cannot sell again just to get up there and form a double top and bounce off resistance, right? Okay. Then that means it's very bearish, right? So if we're breaking through here without that test again up there on that level, then you hold on for a good long short. I mean, you know, stretch that trade out. I would stretch it out quite a bit. I would even hold through this. I would be looking for lower here. Now, by the time I saw all of this whole stretch right here, okay, then I would give up on that, you know, because it's not going any further, right? I mean, it's bouncing off of resistance. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and it's not declining anymore, right? So if I were thinking this was still bearish, I would look for a slow trend down. But also, this MACD is turning green here, saying that the buy to sell ratio has flipped upside down. No good. So this trade is over, but recognize when the trade move is very strong. Okay. Also, recognize that this tested over the VWAP and tested over the 34 EMA here, and it failed. In fact, it didn't even make it all the way back up here to the open swing high. Okay, wouldn't make it all the way back up there. All this stuff didn't sell right here, right? Which is saying that bullies are bad business. Shorties are good business, right? Kind of think of it like popular candies. So tested these median lines. Okay, got to know that VWAP, right? You get bonuses for filling orders on the other side of the VWAP. Well, this thing just peaked out of the VWAP on here, and then the short, you know, the sellers, basically the sellers, slammed it. They got that bonus for being on the other side of that VWAP, right? And so then it set off a big selling scenario here. Okay, so all kinds of bearish indication here. Really good trading right there. This was a good trade, right? Because you've got that long tail there, lots of volume, right? This is a hot bar, hot pivot bar. Very little price movement, lots of volume, more volume than what's normal. Okay, and then you've got right here, you've got the higher lows right there. Okay, so right in here, you would want to be buying this for the breakout. Okay, and anticipating this breaking through resistance. So good trade right there, good trade right there. I suppose you could say basically the same thing about this test of this level up here, the open swing high, as we said over here. So this indicated that there was just, quick wick right there. There wouldn't even reach support and then failed. Okay, so this right here, once it broke, wouldn't even reach resistance. That's the resistance. But this support right here, down here on the bottom right, once it broke through here, you're looking to short anything close to that line. So I would say if you're really savvy, you might try shorting on this side of resistance. Maybe. I mean, this is a bearish indication right here, so you might do it. And then grab a trade there. And then somewhere in here, try to short again off of a bounce, off of resistance. Basically, just try to catch it off the wall and then get another trade. And don't be sticking, if it's not looking terribly bearish or terribly bullish, don't be sticking to a trade a long time, right? Catch the move and then get out, right? Catch the move and get out. Because what happens, if you held on to this, then you gave it all back if you kept on holding on. Okay. Now the thing is here is that this thing failed twice, right? So this on this side of VWAP, it sold off, came on down, and then it came up again, and it wouldn't even touch the open swing high again. So it fails again. Now the second time, right, it indicates a lot more bearishness. So if I'm seeing a lot of bearishness, I get I know that my money's more needed there. Okay, so the more proof positive I can see, the more demand for me. And I also know that other people see the same thing. Okay. And so it's going to enforce that trade. If everybody can kind of see it, okay, then more than likely nobody's going to challenge it. And they're going to wait until everybody in on that trade has made money, and then they'll challenge it. So as you can see, nobody challenged this until over here about 2 hours later. Or an hour later, yeah. Okay, so that's the euro. Gold. Gold was neutral overnight. It ran up, then it ran down. That sold off on the FOMC. It's a good trend. Open swing high. This would be your open swing low. Now this is early enough to be considered an open swing. Okay, the full extent low, full extent high, and then after about this far in, usually that's not your open swings. Okay, so this is lower. It's kind of close to the open, but it's already tested higher and then lower, and it's not quite the open there, right? Okay. Let's see here. Are there any trades here? Now this indicator right here is bullish, right? So you've got this quick tail here, high volume, right? Didn't move any, a lot of volume. It's a pivot bar. Okay. And then it breaks. Okay, so probably catch something off of the support here, maybe, or try to catch a breakout. And if you're catching the breakout, You'd probably want to catch it right there, but it never got that far. In fact, it wouldn't even bounce off of resistance there, right? So that gap there indicates that it's very bearish. Okay, and then basically you see a trend here, steady trend. Price tests, and then price tests, open swing high, fails. Got some bullishness here, but then can't get back up to resistance here and fails, so you know that you're in for a good short trade here. A lot of bearish indication here, meaning that there are sellers not letting price get up because they are trying to sell these higher prices as much as possible. It's just they're in line, okay, and they're trying to catch these prices before it even gets a chance to get up here, right? And so that's why it falls before it gets to test those levels of resistance. So then you can catch a good trade here. Basically, that's a good long stretch there on the gold. I would say that you'd catch a piece of that. I'd probably catch this right here from 12.18 down to 12.17, or maybe better if it falls off fast enough and smoothly enough. Once it starts bouncing back, then it starts talking about taking my money back, so I just bail out. I don't need every tick. I just need to make the trade, and then I'm done. And then I look for the next trade. Okay. Now, so we've got a double test here, a higher low, another higher low. This is all this volume and this oversold situation here. Higher low, higher low. This is all a situation acting like a reversal. This is how people would take it, as a reversal. So probably could catch a piece off of this. Wouldn't be looking to go for any home runs. A lot of bearishness here, and things just you've got to prove that this is a bear chart before you start going home runs. So, but the thing is though, is trend continues. Okay, and I would say that your resistance was right here, and then you're looking for price to break out and then come back and bounce. Now it can come back and bounce a little higher. If it bounces higher, it's very bullish. If it comes back and bounces off the line, it is bullish. If it breaks out through the line and then goes back up, it's iffy. But we peek over the resistance here a couple times, just fail, fail, fail. Now we're bouncing off of resistance here. So this is looking bearish. Could catch a trade off that. That looks like an easy trade. Now, I'm not talking about going from here all the way down to here. I'm just talking about something like right in here. That's it. That's enough ticks. I promise you. Even on one contract. Okay. And then now we've got a quick tail here, and it's bouncing higher off of the line, right? So plenty of volume there. It's saying there's some bullishness there. I wouldn't even mess with that. This chart looks, I'm not liking this chart. It just, there's not a lot of promises here. I would say that ranges are kind of unpredictable, right? I mean, you can kind of predict trends when they're breaking out. They're breaking out through resistance, through support. But when it's bouncing back and forth between resistance and support, then it's kind of tough. So I tend not to trade those ranges, but I'll tell you what, I do know traders, professional traders, that do trade the market profile. Okay, a lot, and you should as well. You should look into market profile trading. Look into James or Jim Dalton and John Hoagland. Now, John Hoagland is a student of James or Jim Dalton. Okay, they are big into the market profile, which means that basically they have volume down here, but they've also got volume at every single tick. Okay, and so they accumulate that every day, and then they add it up over time, like over a week, over the months, over the total time. Okay, and basically those areas that stick out the most are significant to traders, and it does influence the team's trading. So that can kind of help. And basically where you're seeing these ranges here, right, on charts, usually that's an area of what they call balance, which is where the market profile likes to hang out. So it just returns to that what they call point of control. It's where the market profile volume sticks out, and because there's a lot of volume at those prices, and then buyers and sellers just continuously rotate in there. And so since they're there, then basically algorithms and traders, they get in on that, and so they just sell the outsides and they buy the outsides, right? So once it gets to the full extension at the top, sell it. Once it gets to the full extension at the bottom, buy it, and vice versa, until it breaks out, and and it shows that it's going to do something else. But I honestly can't trade the range very well without the volume profile, without the market profile. So, and there's a whole way of understanding that. So on the bottom of all of my videos, there are the names to study in order to get familiarized with that market profile. Let's see here, we got oil, last market. Okay, it looks like it was bullish yesterday, and then probably a neutral, nope, long inventory here, and then wait, that's not, got the wrong day. Alright, so yesterday was a little bit bearish, kind of neutral bearish. Was some good trading on that market. Overnight was neutral, and then today so open swing low, and then open swing high. I would put that right here, which is right where it tests lower again. It does bounce off the 34 EMA here. You've got a quick wick right there, so it bounces pretty fast off that line, which is very bullish. So you're definitely looking for a breakout here. Trade the breakout, pretty easy. Wait for price to come back down and bounce off of support, and so it does, and then wait for a breakout. Here's your breakout. Price starts talking to you about taking some money back, so you bail out, and basically you're gonna be looking for I would say that this would be your new resistance. So basically what you're doing is you're looking for price to bounce off of support first, right, which it does here, and then break out up here, right? But instead of bouncing and breaking out of resistance, it goes ahead and it fails. But it is 2.5 hours. Well, on the oil market, it's over 3 hours since the open. So because it's open for that long, already everybody's made their money. As you can see, this was pretty good money here. They are gone. It's that time of day, and you've got some failure here at the top. You've got some overbought situation. Market's overbought, right? So hasn't sold off yet. Could easily be sold here. Got a trend down here. Breaks through support here. Basically, what happens here is that this level right here becomes non-important, and so now the new level becomes this. This is the new low, okay, which becomes support. This little high right here becomes the new high. Okay, now that's not to say that the day high, the high of the day, which is this right here, that's not to say that that's not significant, right? So keep in mind you've got double tops that are something that come up there. You've also got another breakout, right? So test the double top and then a breakout. So those are, those are big trades. What's going to happen if this thing does reach back up there? It's going to be a lot of stops right here. So if price breaks through and hits all those stops, it's going to have a lot of short sellers buying to cover. So when they're trying to get out of their short position they are buying, that is fueling the price to rocket on up. Okay, but that's common occurrence. That's something that you look for. Basically, it's a trap. Okay, but doesn't look like it's headed back up there. We've got new resistance here, support here. We've got some range here. I would be willing to bet that there's probably some market profile node over here where the volume on these prices sticks out a little bit. Finally, we break out of that range, and this forms the new low here. Okay, this is the I would say that this is your resistance. So basically right here, what I am looking for, we'll go ahead and trade this really quick just to have a trade today. So basically what I'm looking for is I'm looking for a breakout right here to catch, and I'll short this, or a bounce. Now the 34 EMA is right there as well. We are nearing the close, and this is pretty late in the day, so I'm not really liking that situation. Almost liking the S&P 500 E-mini situation a little bit better. Oh, my charts just disappeared. Well, here. Okay, so NASDAQ. Let's see here. What's supposed to break out? So NASDAQ doesn't make it back up to the open swing high. Has resistance right here. Looks out. Fails. This is the new low. Okay, so we've broken through here. This is looking really, like a shabby chart, like basically it's all robots and there's nobody here. So that's the NASDAQ and the S&P 500 E-mini. Well, this is looking more and more bearish. So I'm going to look for a bearish trade on the S&P 500 E-mini. Here it is. I see a little bit of a trend down here. I'll keep an eye on that. See some failure at the top. There's a double top there. We're in a range right here. If this thing can break through, that might be a good sell-off there from the highs. So I'll keep an eye on the NASDAQ and the S&P 500 E-mini, and also this oil market. And the thing is that at this time of day, which is 4 hours now after the open of the equity markets. Okay, so at this time of day, normally the euro is not going to be good action. Normally the gold is closed now. The S&P 500 and NASDAQ can be, if they're still at their highs or they're still at their lows, there can be action. The oil can be action. Oil can kind of always be action, just out of the blue. Oil, I think, is the most volatile market out of all of these futures markets. So, if you like volatility and you like good long stretching trades, the oil is the rodeo. A lot of people swear by oil. Not oil the product, oil the market. Like, as in oil pride. Oil futures pride. I swear, they swear by it. Yeah, I would honestly say that this is a begrudging trade. But I'll go ahead and I'll change this one over to oil. So we've got oil on the right dome, and I've got NASDAQ on the left dome. And I think I want to change this NASDAQ over to S&P 500 E-mini. Okay. Because that one's trading a lot more rationally. So basically I'm looking for a breakout here. But I don't really want to buy anything bouncing off of anything. Like, I wouldn't short this right here or up here expecting, to make more lows. Because it's that time of day, trading is kind of melancholious. The melancholy trap is set, and so that you think you're going to get a bounce here, but then it just ranges or something, or it just drifts. It's really weird. It kind of drifts. So what I would be looking for is stops. Also an indication, right, that puts people into the trade. Now, how are you going to get people to get into the trade if they're not going to trade this because of the melancholy trap? Well, you need a breakout, right? That's the most traded trade, is the breakout. So you've got to get this to break out here, as well as get a breakout on the equities. Well, this bar is filling up with a lot of volume here, and it's not really moving, right? I mean, maybe a couple ticks there, and it's already got quite a bit of volume here, relatively. Okay, I'm also going to look at the heat maps for these markets. Excuse me. Okay, so yeah, S&P, the Nasdaq just broke through support, and the S&P 500 is knocking on the floor. So I suspect that S&P 500 could break through. So it's testing support here, and then this is Nasdaq. Nasdaq has broken through support. Several ticks. That would have been a good trade. And it looks like there's still plenty of selling volume on the NASDAQ heat map. Take a look here. So as you can see, this right here, this area right here was support. It breaks through. And as you can see, these red bubbles are indicating that the sellers are slamming the market. They aren't even waiting for the limit orders to be hit. They're hitting market orders, and they're doing it into the lows, which means if they're doing it into the lows, there's a lot of eager selling there. Okay. Looks like S&P 500 has broken through support. Few ticks here. Doesn't look like my heat map for S&P 500 is working. Okay. Yeah, there's not much to say about it. There is a heavy level of liquidity up here at the top of the S&P 500 E-mini range, but we barely even looked down here below support. This is support. Made this price down here and then returned back up to support. The NASDAQ, however, broke out significantly and would indicate that S&P 500 is in for some selling, I would assume, but it doesn't seem like there's anybody home. Like, where are all the stop orders? Somebody's got to test those stop orders. Take a look at the dome here and look at these volume levels, right? Got a 1400 down here at 4350 compared to 1000. It can be significant. One way to check depth of market health is just to look at the advanced dome here. So, okay, so price is right here. I need to check that oil. So this thing could be selling on down. If it's going to sell on down, I'm going to look for a breakout here to hit some stops maybe. But okay, so S&P 500 is having a hard time staying down. NASDAQ dropped even lower. So see what I'm trying to do? I'm seeing the NASDAQ and then I'm trying to front run the S&P 500 based on the NASDAQ. Okay. So on this, basically what you do is you're going to look at the delta within the depth of market. Okay, so right here where my arrows are, or where my arrow is at, what you've got are sellers in the red, buyers in the blue. You've got offers over here in the column. So blue numbers here, these are buyers out in the market. These are actually executed trades. Okay. In the red column, though, this is offers, the limit orders. Okay. Now, if you're looking at this on the dome, basically you don't get to see these blue numbers or these red numbers. Okay. So you don't see those at all. Basically, what you see is the volume bars on the regular charts. Okay, there's no volume on these domes over here. These are normal domes. This is an advanced dome, and in the red column here, you're seeing the exact same numbers as over here on the right side in your offers. Same thing with the bids on the left side here in the blue column. You've got the bids over here in the left side in the left column, right? Now this price column in the middle on the dome, the regular dome, is over here on the very left on the advanced dome. So instead of the price being in the middle, it's off on the side. And then in the middle, what you have are the buying and selling volume, okay? And it's splitting it between buyers and sellers, okay? And so basically what that means is that you can see how much more selling than buying there are in each tick and each each order push or each push of orders. One thing you can also do is well, I would show you some other kind of time and sales tape, but maybe another time. NASDAQ is continuing to push lower. So tons of selling there. Doesn't look like they have a ton of selling like they had previously at the previous lows, so it could be bottoming out. That is like this. As you can see, this area, I think it's bottoming out there, and I will show you because I'm teaching you. Basically, you've got a lot of market orders. See all these bubbles here? All the way down. Sell, sell, sell. Market orders, market orders, market orders. That was a pretty big buy order right there. But it could be just profit taking. So, anyway, these market orders on and down into the lows here mean a lot. But then you've got lows again, and there are not a lot of sellers down there. But here again, though, despite that, price is going lower. But I don't expect it to go much lower. And notice the liquidity here. Buyers are here. They're wanting to buy to cover. So somebody's probably got a lot of orders. Okay. Notice how it bounced. Price came down. It hit that liquidity. And then, boom, right back up, right? So buyers right here, that's the shorts that are capitalizing on this. Okay. Or it's somebody that just wants to get in low and they know that there's shorts here that ought to just hold on to their shorts and then trade with them because they're holding a lot of liquidity. You see, one of the problems with trading is if you've got a big position on, basically you want to start working out of the position up here. So price isn't even going to go that low, right? And so yeah, see this reversal right here? Well, look how it looks on the other chart. See that big quick tail right there? Right? Means that it's reversing. So I think the S&P 500 is going to reverse. Normally, if the S&P 500 was very resistant to selling off, then it would probably buy up or lift the offer pretty easily. But at this time of day, I'm not assuming anything. But anyway, as I was saying, so if I've got a big stack of orders up here, I want to start taking profits somewhere in here because of slippage. Okay, basically slippage is that once you start trying to liquidate your position, right, that causes the market to go the other way. Right, so if I'm short and I'm trying to take profits, and then I'm buying to cover, what's going to happen? It's going to lift the price. It's going to lift the offer. Okay, but if I hold on because I see liquidity all the way down here, I'm probably not the only one that's thinking that. So I can hold on all the way down into it, and then try to basically liquidate into that liquidity. Okay, and then Viola, I can get rid of my whole stack all the way down here. And maybe, just maybe, I don't liquidate my whole stack, but I can still just try to liquidate somewhere down here, which is better than up here, right? Right. So by this time, right, it'd be pretty hard right here to liquidate right here because the price was moving so fast. But certainly right here, there was a lot of rotation, right? So you'd liquidate by then. So that's the story about these liquidity lines like this. Sometimes it's a magnet, and another thing is, I'll tell you, I should look closer. Actually, I should look at the oil. Oh, look at the oil. Didn't it? It did. It finally broke out there, see? And I wasn't even watching because I was watching these other charts. Oh well. Okay, so I missed that trade, but that was coming along. You know what? I was looking for that breakout lower on the NASDAQ too, but I was going to trade the S&P 500 E-mini because I thought it was more rationally behaving market today. Well, I was wrong. Well, I got to remember that, right? We got to remember that. What happened here? Well, there was a bunch of stops here. Okay, that's what happened. And then once price hit the stops on the NASDAQ, it flies off. It's a fairly volatile market. It's a lot more volatile than the S&P 500, to be honest with you. So I'll keep that in mind. Yeah, well, I mean, what you want is a breakout and hit stops, and then they matter. Whereas on the S&P 500, it kind of broke out, but it didn't matter because there was no stops there. So, so I'll put the heat map away, and then I'll finish explaining this. I'll probably explain it more another time, but basically, you got your price over here on the left. You've got your market execution over here in the middle. This is considered the middle where the red numbers are and the blue numbers. And then you've got your bids in the blue column, and you've got your offers in the red column. Now, these outside numbers, okay, in the blue and the red column, okay, they are what are happening to the bids and offers. Okay, so over here on your dome, basically what you're seeing is bids and offers, and you're seeing the bids and offers going up and down. Sometimes they're just like one number up and down, or they make big moves up and down, but you really don't even know what they're actually doing until you see this. Okay, and so what this shows you is basically since basically how many contracts have been added or subtracted from the bid. Okay, so basically what happened here is 130 of these bids were sold. Actually 137 now. Okay, now that takes away from the bid, but at the same time they were adding contracts, and that's what this outside number means. They were adding. Okay, but when there's a negative number, now take a look over here, and that can happen over here. Negative number can happen on the bid side. So there's a negative number on the offers over here, right? So here's the offers. These are limit orders to sell. Now notice the limit order to sell moves, but the, let's see, what's that? The S&P 500? Yeah, I'm going to buy that. Okay. Notice that the limit order to sell, it moves, but the buyers don't move, right? So what's happening here? Well, what's happening are that they're adding or subtracting contracts to that tick or that price. Okay, and so if the actual executed contracts out here in the market are not moving, but the bids or the offers in this case are moving, then you can actually see that they are being subtracted from or increasing based on how these work. So if you've got positive 300 added already, and then your offers get bigger, and then you look over here and it's positive 600, it means they just added 300 more contracts. If it was positive 300, and then you've got, but this was positive 300, your offers were positive 300, and then this tally over here was positive 300, but then all of a sudden it goes to 0. Okay, and then you've got a negative 300 over here in the tally. Okay, it means that they pulled 300 contracts out, and that's part of what they do in this algorithmic mayhem, but it can also be done manually, not with computers. So basically, hold on, let me check this trade out, see if it's going to work. So they're adding bids over here. Now they're subtracting. Well, this could turn bad. Yeah, it looks like it's probably going to stop me out. Well, didn't these trades turn out well, huh? Talking too much. Okay, so so that's how that works. Basically, this tally on the outside shows you how much they're adding or subtracting to the limit orders. Okay, so that you can see if they are pulling or adding contracts. Now, you won't be able to see that over here on this regular dome. And basically, what it means is that, let's say that you've got a steady number of 100. Let's say 100 on the bid, okay? But the actual sells out here in the market continuously rise and rise and rise, okay? So it's going from like 50 to 100 to 200 to 300 to 400, but the bid stays at 100. You're going, what's going on? Why can this not go down any further? Because the sellers keep on increasing, but the bid stays the same. Why doesn't it continue to go down? It should be looking down. It's because the algorithms are actually buying right here. You see this number right here, 1,260? They're adding tons. That's actually adding tons of buyers or buy orders to that bid. Okay. And so while the actual bid in on this part right here stays the same, and the actual sell orders continuously rise and rise and rise, okay, the tally number of what's being added to the bid rises and rises and rises with those sell orders here in the red numbers. Okay, so this usually matches this. This is an equation, right? So basically, you subtract these sell orders from this bid number, okay? But then you also see over here if they are subtracting contracts or adding contracts to that bid number. And basically, if they are adding lots of bids to your bid number, and they're selling a lot over here, generally it means that they may be pushing price up. It's the same on the other side. If they're adding lots of offers to the offer over here, whether or not there's a lot of buying, sometimes no matter how much buying is happening, they will not let price go up. They will just continuously sell offers into all of the buyers so that they cannot control. And then at the same time, sometimes they'll control the other side and they will pull bids out, right? And so what happens is that the bids get smaller, and therefore it's easier for the sellers to overpower that price and push the price down, right? So if you have a lot of bids that are stacked up high, it takes a lot of sellers to overpower that bid. But if you have only few bids, then it doesn't take as many sellers to overpower and push price down. And it's the same over here on the offers. The higher the offers, the higher number of buyers you gotta get to overpower. The lower the offers, the fewer number of buyers that you need to overpower. And so if they're controlling here, what they can wind up doing, either serendipitously or intentionally, is they can stack contracts on one side, and then they on one side of the market, and then they can pull contracts on the other side, right? So they stack them up high so that price can't go that way, but then they pull them out and make them low, so price has to go that way, right? There's a few different strategies that they can do in this, and I'll tell you what, I studied this for a while, and I watched it for quite a while on some different markets, all at the same time, and it becomes very tedious and boring. it just it was just kind of a funny practice to me. There are actually traders from the old school days, I guess, when they were working in the prop firms up in the office buildings, and they had to stare at these kinds of things right here, these regular domes. And so they had to learn how to read these. They didn't have charts, right? And so they read these really well. And so they actually see these kind of like the way you see the charts, right? They see the levels and that kind of thing. They're also using these volume profile deals on the side. So I'm not so good at that. Actually, it does drive me a little bit crazy. I can pay attention to the charts, and then that'll top it for me. Excuse me, my voice is getting hoarse. Now look at this. Is that a pivot or what? Yeah, I think that's a pivot. Looks like it on the NASDAQ as well. I'm gonna go ahead and pick up a contract here and see if it doesn't pan out. Oh, and then over here on the far right with the light red and the light blue, basically it takes the sells here in the red numbers and the buys here in the blue numbers and then totals them up over here. And so you can get your volume profile like this over here split into a delta, and then you can see the difference between the buyers and the sellers and see how much more significant one is over the other. And you can get indications over notions about trading buyers and sellers based on these kinds of things. And you know, if you study this long enough, eventually you'll see the patterns. They'll start to come out at you. But the thing is, though, is that it's hard to memorize all this stuff. It's harder to memorize, whereas the charts, they memorize this stuff for you. Okay, but it is a learning experience to do a study on this until you do finally start to see the patterns. I promise you that. Basically, it's kind of a lesson in business, in fact. So it's there for you if you need it. That is an advanced dome from trading, jigsaw trading. It's only $400 for a lifetime certificate or license key for the software. I do not know where they've got an advanced dome like that anywhere else. I don't think they do. I know that the other brand of heat map, which is Bookmap, which is it's more sophisticated of a heat map than the jigsaw trading, but the advanced dome is not as dexterous and sophisticated as the jigsaw trading, and the Bookmap is $100 a month, whereas the jigsaw trading is $400 for a lifetime. So here you go. I got a picture of this on here, right? So these tractors, these combines are actually pretty high-tech equipment now. And you can see they use the track so they don't sink in the mud. They get more of a purchase on the wet soil, the soft soil. And these things, these heads on these things are huge. So these are the biggest harvesting equipment that there ever were. And, I just kind of put it up there as a meme in comparison to the computer I've got and the internet. I've got 7 monitors on right now, and I do a lot. I have all my business, all of my research on here, all of my communication. It's all done on here, and this is like my harvester like this. So I just put this meme up there, basically harvesting markets, harvesting information, harvesting job training, that kind of thing, news, etc., etc. Alright, so we're watching the S&P 500 here. So I'm thinking that this right here is that reverse bar. It does look like the NASDAQ has reversed. Let's take a look at that. I'll show you that. Basically, you've got the you've got this big quick tail right here. Okay, definitely an indication of a reversal. They tried to reverse right there. They couldn't get it done. I'm looking at the heat map. It looks like it broke through some selling liquidity pretty strongly on the NASDAQ. So in here, they tried to get in the way with some selling, but buyers just broke through those sellers and continued up. But it's fairly oversold here, So I mean, once it's oversold, then it's got to come back. You know what? Another thing here I'd be looking for the cup and the handle. So I'd be looking for the handle to form in here somewhere. Okay. It'll probably bounce around here and then try this again. Probably with a higher low right there. It won't even come back down to here, and that'll be the handle. So I'll be watching that trade there. In the meantime, S&P 500 is slow. So this wound up being an okay trade right here. Let's see here. Breakout from 45 down to 43. That's $2 on the S&P 500 E-mini. That's $100 per contract. So it was a decent trade. Gosh, got flipped around, and that almost always happens to me when it's it's really small, slow, drawn out moves like this. Usually I'm a fool in that kind of market where I'll be buying the short trade and I'll be selling the long trade. It's bad. But in the morning, everything's fairly clear. It's honest. It's honest in the morning. Okay, so I'm going to set up, this one's the NASDAQ here. I'm going to set up for a breakout. The resistance line is right here at 92, 57.92. And then I always set up 2 ticks out of the breakout because I want to make sure it's got momentum. So that's if the breakout happens without forming a handle on the cup first. So I'm thinking price might come back down here somewhere and then bounce. Now if it comes down here and bounces, I'll probably pick it up right here and then take a ride through the breakout up here. I can see on my chart that price did test this resistance right here at 92. Then it fell off. Now, of course, the NASDAQ could continue to sell off and ES could test lower a little bit. I don't know how likely that would be at this time of day, though. I wouldn't think there's enough volume to continue lower. Also, I'm looking at the MACD here, watching how quickly, right, the trajectory of the red bar is becoming shorter and shorter, which means that there we go. So it broke out. I'm in to the trade here on the NASDAQ as well as the S&P 500 E-mini. It did test the resistance, as in broke out, but it fell back below. Remember, 92 right here is the resistance, and now it's 2 ticks below it. So there may not be enough buying right there, but I'll give it some room to work. I'm looking at the heat map. Let's look at the heat map here. And as you can see here, you can see a steady trend where it tests lower and then it goes up higher. It tries to test lower, but it can't get back down to the previous low. And it goes higher, and then it tries to test lower, and it can't get back down to the previous low, and then it goes on higher. So it's a good steady indication of some bullishness there, or some interested bulls. But we'll see. It could be some interested bears in there now. I am still supposing that is not the case. I think this S&P 500 is a little bit boring. Why don't we set it aside and bring down the NASDAQ here. You can see the breakout here tested. That is a quick wick. Normally that would indicate some failure is on the way, but it's still up here. Price is still up here, testing resistance. Okay, so I'm holding on. There we go. Breaks out again. So it's dollar over resistance. S&P 500 went up $1 for me. So right here, what I'm doing is I'm waiting for a rush on both sides. If I can get a rush of maybe 4 more ticks on the S&P 500, I'm okay. Over here on the NASDAQ, I'd probably wait for about maybe 6 or 8 ticks. Good rush on there at this time of day would be about 6 or 8 ticks on the NASDAQ, and then on the same thing on the S&P 500. You know, if it gives me 10 or 12 on the NASDAQ, you know, that could happen. On the S&P 500, I doubt it. I think 6 would probably be about 6 or 8 would probably be about the max. Now I may be giving back this money. I may be asking for too much. Probably should have went with 4 ticks here and just 6 ticks over here from the NASDAQ. But yeah, cause see, look at this. That's I know what happened. There's some liquidity up here at the top that's spooking the market, but I bet you anything it disappears when the market goes back up there. So it's a spoof trade. Here, I'll show you. Okay, so what that means is that basically the programs put on some high liquidity here to scare price down. And then they moved that liquidity down 2 ticks to right here. But as soon as price looked back at it, it disappeared. So what it's trying to do is it's trying to pressure price down. And a lot of times when they do that, they're not trying to short sell the market. They're actually trying to accumulate longs. If there's liquidity up here on the short side on the offer, like this, and it's trying to spook down the price with fake orders up here, then they're probably trying to buy over here. Okay, and so anytime price looks back up there, they don't want to sell, really. So the liquidity disappears real fast, and that's kind of what gives away that they're actually accumulating the other side of the market down here. Alright, so here's where we're going to look for our handle to form. You know what, I'll tell you what though, actually I haven't been paying attention to this very much lately. Basically, right here, this 34 EMA, which is my e-money line. It's the center of the chart action. The median, basically, that works as a support and a resistance line a lot of times. And I probably should have just closed once it got up that, up to that high. Same thing on the S&P 500 E-mini. So I'm going to go ahead and buy another contract long here on this thing. As if this was going to be the handle right here. Because I am getting a little bit of a bounce there. Looks like it failed. Got a quick tail there. That was a quick boost from the bulls. It's looking a little more bullish. Notice the MACD continues to turn from red to green. It's just about to turn over. Go ahead and get out of one of these longs on the NASDAQ because that is taking a little bit too long for me. I'd like to see it move a little bit faster, so I don't want to hold on to that much risk and wait all the way up here. Now, if it makes it all the way up there, okay. Right? But, okay, so there we go. Now we're testing resistance again at 92. Normally what you would look for on a bearish chart is that basically price would come down here and break through support and then come back up and bounce off of that as resistance and continue on down. Now, in this case here, you could say that this could be a turnaround off of the 34 EMA so that basically it touches that center median and then continues on down. we'll see if I can't capture a breakout at 93, so $1 over resistance. And basically, in this case, if it's going to trend on down, what I'll look for is a breakout through support, and then, of course, a bounce off of this as resistance, not of this. But once it gets down here, then of course this is going to be support. Double bottom. Does it break out or does it bounce off that? Does it bounce off of? This is a higher
process that creates this boredom that we see in the world now may very well be a self-perpetuating, unconscious form of brainwashing created by a world totalitarian government based on money.
See the high and low, you've got a couple of tails there. This is looking like the handle on the cup, right? First test was a no-go. Now it's still working its way back up into that resistance again. You can see over here on the heat map,
See, I think it's quite possible.
here's that test lower again, and it comes up, and you can see that it's a trend, right? Higher low, same low, higher low. Okay, now it's breaking out, just like we expected. Gotta remind you, this is a very melancholious time of day to be trading. So it just takes longer. You gotta give these trades a little bit longer before you're sure about it, you know. Look at that. It looks like it made another sharp bounce right there off of that. Stayed within that trend line, higher low. Okay. Looking very positive. In fact, what I'll do is I'll put my second contract, long contract here, because this is breaking out right here. Basically, there's so many indicators on these charts for this NASDAQ market right now that anybody who's watching this play out here is going to go ahead and enter a long position here. So right here is that breakout moment. There we go. So now it's broken out. We're going to get the surge. We're looking for a surge to break through this 34 EMA here. I'll go ahead and put my stop here. Basically, it's got to break this resistance as well, which it's doing. Okay. Good job. Continue with the surge. S&P over here is creeping up. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and grab that, and then I'm going to put one there. And if it continue to surge, I'll grab another surge. Go ahead and close that one there. Okay, so this is my total. I was down 300. Alright, so I was down 300 and I've worked myself back up to negative 30. So basically, I've paid $300 for $270. There's a bar of liquidity right here, I think it is, or somewhere right here on the heat map. I can see it. Let's see, it's right there. It's at 98. You can see on the dome. There's 108 contracts at 98. High level of liquidity. Actually, there's a high level of liquidity on the S&P right here at 48. 1,600 contracts on the offer. So there are some sellers. Up. Well, it looks like S&P 500 is breaking out a little bit. I'm not going to risk it. It's so slow. They could continue to go up. Now look, the MACD is turning green here. So basically that means that the buyers are outnumbering the sellers now, okay? And it's the same on the S&P 500 here. We've got a trend similar to what's on the NASDAQ. Resistance there. And sure. Give that a little bit of room, I guess. still be some bullishness in here. What I'll do is I'll watch the heat map, which is more of a fine tooth market. So I'll see if this thing doesn't try to tempt resistance up here again. It looks like it's breaking this, so it's making a new low, right? So low, low, new low, or lower low. So now if it breaks out up here again, I'll see how it breaks out, and then I'll buy it low before it breaks out. See that quick tail right there? It's a good indicator right there. We'll see. So I'm just trading 3 contracts for these lessons. Now in this case, I could go, well, you know, I'm not going to make as much on this S&P 500. So what I could do is just close this contract and put the extra contract over here. I don't like to triple up anytime unless I'm as sure that it's a reversal. Right? It's going to be a big reversal. That's the only time. And it's already bad enough that I'm long a contract over here on the equities, and then I'm long 2 contracts over here on the equities, right? It's the same. It's virtually the same. So that, to me, is risky. Also, I'm going to go ahead and lower this down to 44. Willing to pay more for the trade, so I'll give that more room to kind of belly out before it goes on up. Now take a look here. So what I've got here is I've got market orders, that's what these bubbles are, happening at the highs. So somebody's willing to buy up at the highs, and they're so eager that they're hitting buy market at the highs rather than the lows, right? So also notice that the liquidity disappeared. It disappeared the second time that the high came around, and notice that it's not there, right? So basically that's a spoof, and it tried to scare price down here, and I believe that when that spoofed it down here again, they accumulated more down here, and they probably took some profit somewhere here, but it looks like they probably bought a little bit more, anticipating a good breakout. I think that's what it's about to do. So all this stuff is setting up bullishly. This is an indicator that they were accumulating longs, and there's not really any selling resistance up here. It's just in order to scare price down so they can buy lower. So we come back down here, probably to either this support or this support, one of the two. So if this continues to surge, then A-OK, right? If not, though, then not so interested. So I need a big surge. So I just put it a little ways out of reach, so it can't just like just tippy toe up there and then touch me in. It's got to surge. So that way I know it's going somewhere and then I can grab something rather than it just tippy toe me in and then I'm stuck and it pulls back and I lose what I just made. Well, you know what? It is getting close to the last hour. Looks like there's some resistance forming up here on the offer. I think that's good. That was a good, decent exhibition. This is, you know, a melancholious time of day. It's not always predictable. This right here was the predictable part, right? So the big bounce off the bottom off of being oversold into a thinly traded time of day, meaning that basically you get so low that there's just not enough rocket fuel to keep going in that direction. So basically rocket just got to fall back to the earth, the middle, right? So this trade right here, and then of course this bounce trade right here. The sure trades. Now we're kind of getting into risky territory. They made money here. They probably run away. They take profits and get out while they're ahead. That kind of thing. So, alright. So I guess that's probably too much for today, or more than enough. And good luck.